You are now listening to Booty Call the Bride, where we focus on breaking sexual cycles that lead you away from marriage and keep you stuck being viewed as someone who is only pursued sexually. Well. Thank you so much for tuning in for another episode of the Booty Call the Bride podcast. Hey guys, you are giving me amazing feedback saying you love the podcast, how you're learning so much. I need you to do me a favor and head over to iTunes and leave your girl a 5-star review. Yes, I'm asking for all 5 of those stars. Write a review on there. Tell the people how the show is affecting you, how you're loving it. And even if you think there's something we can improve, do that too. And if you have any questions for me about how to be on the show or questions in general that you want addressed on the show, shoot me an email to bootycalltobride@gmail.com. And Dr. Summers, can you start off by telling the listeners what you do for a living and what you're passionate about?
Absolutely. Let's see. I am currently an assistant professor at Jacksonville University in the clinical mental health counseling program. And before that, I've done 23 years in the profession, counseling adolescents and families and adults and couples and individuals, single women, especially African American. The last 10 years of my profession, my passion has become making sure that African American families and communities are well. And so here I am at Jacksonville University, just raising up the next generation of counselors and making sure that they are culturally competent. That's my love.
Wow. You've done so much, and so it's just an honor to even be able to get your perspective today. So I just want to ask you this. Do you feel like there's a certain demographic of people that you are assigned to cover or influence?
I love the way you asked that question. There are many people that are counselors and it's their job, but I have always felt called to do this work, and I've always felt blessed and graced and anointed to be able to do this work. I think it's one thing to see a counselor who can speak through their own experiences and speak about book knowledge, but man, being with a counselor who can tap into the Holy Spirit is amazing. And I cannot tell you how many people I've been able to walk through along this journey and see healing. And I'm talking about healing. I ain't talking about management of symptoms, but I'm talking about healing. But I have been assigned 23 years, just assigned to whoever would come to me. I just felt like people would come to me because the Lord led them to me. Now, the last 10 years of my profession, I really felt particularly led to make sure African American people are well. And currently, I still feel that same way. I am called to make sure Black people are doing well.
I love it. Great. So the listeners can understand your perspective, not only professionally, but what type of home environment did you grow up in? And then what home environment are you in now? Like a single parent home, 2 parents? Mm-hmm. Are you married and have kids? All that.
All right. Yes, I know that's right. Like, don't have nobody on my show talking about absent fathers and you grew up with in the house. Let's see, man, my story is so complicated and we have 30 minutes. No way I can tell it all. Let's see. My childhood, I grew up with an absent father. I grew up homeless. I grew up in foster care systems. My mother was alcoholic and abusive. Let's see. I was adopted twice at 4. Yes, and then again at 12, but my life did not become stable until after 12 years old when I was adopted by a 2-parent household. And so we'll talk about the counterbalance of a father in the home when there has been absence, paternal absence in the beginning. But yeah, my childhood was way chaotic, having to overcome lots of obstacles. But honestly, biblically, those people who are called and anointed and do great works, honey, their life was a mess and challenged. So my life is no different from theirs. Now, I've been married twice, and that first marriage, we'll talk maybe a bit about this and how we choose relationships. I chose a man who was like my father, absent. And then after some years of healing, I chose a man who is very present. Very present. So we'll talk about healing and attracting healthier mates as well.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So this episode is really special to me because it's a little different than what I usually ask. And I'm just so happy that you're able to give this perspective.
One thing, Michelle, I'd like to bring up is the reasons why fathers tend to not be in the home, and especially minority dads or African American dads. And one of the biggest reasons that fathers are not in the home that we have to look at is systemic oppression, or systems that are built up against them that still exist in this country to keep them out of the homes. Dr. Joy LaGrue spoke about this in her book, Post-Slavery Syndrome. But she talked about when we were slaves, the African American man, the black man, was separated from his family so that he could work. And the women were at home taking care of the children, but it set up this caste system where the men weren't in the homes. Here we are years later, and the men still aren't in the home. It's a pattern that we've repeated, that we're used to, with the men not being in the home. Women have acted in a way in which, and people are going to be mad at this, but in which men are not welcome in the home. That whole I don't need a man attitude shows men that you don't need a man by your actions and your beliefs, some of the things that we do as African American women. And that castrates men, again, just as it was done in slavery. And then, Michelle, was so interesting, social workers have been around way longer than my profession, which is counselors. But there's this thing called social worker raids. In the 60s, social workers, white social workers, would go into public housing where mostly black families were, and they would do what's called midnight raids. And they would go into these homes to make sure men weren't in the homes. So in order to be able to get benefits, you can't have a man, right? Mm-hmm. And so again, it's still a system that's set up today. And oh my God, okay, Michelle, girl, we could talk forever. Okay, here's something that irks me. If you start looking at the commercials on TV, you will find that most of those commercials with African American women, they are single parents. So there's a commercial with the woman with her baby on the subway bus, and she's saying, another delay. Oh my God, it's a Pampers commercial, and she's shaking the baby, and you just keep bouncing on my leg like a bouncy castle. Why come that mom can't be with a black male with her child on her leg? Most of the commercials, black women are single, and there is a perception that black women are unmarriable, and so we believe that hype, we act in that hype, and those are things that continue to keep men out of the home. Systemic oppression from slavery, as well as social worker raids and taking care of black women through welfare and government aid. You cannot have a man if you won't government a system. So there are plenty of things that keep men out of the home. And so in order for a woman to heal from her father's absence, she has to understand or look at or become aware of some of the systems that were against him and that still are against African American men. So I just wanted to be able to say that so we don't give a perception that we are male bashing and talking about black men not being in the home. Absolutely not. So that's what I wanted to say. Thank you so much.
Man, that just took it to a whole nother level right there. Wow, I never heard of what those things that you just described. And that sounds like so unbelievable, but I know it happened. So that's just wow.
Yes.
Woo. So there's always different dynamics that lead a father to not being in the home. Like, for example, my father passed away when I was 3 years old, and my mom never remarried, never dated, none of that. Do you think that it makes a difference for the reason that a parental parent is not in the home, a father, or is it just the fact that the father's not present at all?
I know. You know what? That's so very interesting, because the one kind of person who is not exempt from the effects of having an absent father, but the symptoms and the patterns and the things that they endure is different. And that is the children of widows or widowers. So when the father has passed on, those children seem to, their effects seem to be different. Or less harsh than fathers who were not there because of incarceration or just irreconcilable differences, can't talk, or divorce or what have you. But that's interesting. So that's just not my opinion, but that's in the research.
Oh, got it. Okay. So does a stepfather or another man who steps up, or maybe even a family member, and having them consistently present in a woman's life, does that lessen the effect of the circular relationship patterns?
I know, right? You would think so. So let me talk from my own experience, right? My father, who is an amazing man, and I have a relationship with my biological father. When I was born, his way of caring for me in his mind was to be able to get money. He needed money to be able to take care of me. So he began crime sprees and got caught. In fact, he was Charlotte's bank robber, and he was called the Bright Sweater Bandit. And again, as the Bright Sweater Bandit, one of Charlotte's first infamous bank robbers, I'm all in the newspaper, and I got those newspaper clippings. Lord have mercy. So he did 10 years, and then the first time that I met him would have been at 10 years old. And when he got out, he, in order to continue to provide for me, he couldn't get a job as a felon. So, he went on another crime spree and did another 10 years. So by the time he got out the second time, I was 20, and he was not yet done with being criminal minded. And I will say he's brilliant. That's where I get my brilliance, my creativity. He's a very smart man. And I work daily to not use my intellect for wrong. But anyway, he did 3 10-year stints. So that's 30 years of my life that he was gone. But I was adopted at 12 by an amazing 2-parent household folks. And while my adopted father was there and was present, it took me years to learn to be able to trust him and to know that he even loved me. And I didn't know that until I was 18 years old, when they dropped me off at college. And the last trip up, bringing my things to my dorm room, my dad didn't come in. So I asked my mom, I'm like, where's dad? And she said he couldn't make the last trip. And I went down to the van to see him. He was bawling his eyes out. And I knew then, this man loves me. But it took 7 years to realize that. So even though another man steps in as a stepfather or an adoptive father, that conscious and unconscious perception based on the biological father's absence has already been imprinted in a woman's mind.
Wow. Mm-hmm. That's good. So how can a woman recognize if her absent father is affecting her relationship patterns?
I know there's so many things in the research about a woman whose father is not there. And I'm sure your listeners and you, we already know some of these pattern things, like women whose fathers were not there, or they had low paternal investment. They have difficulty trusting men. They choose quantity over quality, which means, in Black communities, we say something like, no man, we don't believe in that. No man is better. What is it? A man is better than no man. Right. Do you know what I'm saying? Say that, Michelle. Have you heard that before?
Yes, I know what you're saying. Better to have than to be alone, basically.
Yes. And even though we say stuff like we don't believe that, our actions show differently when the father wasn't in the home. So we choose quantity over quality. We won't look for a good man. Any man who's there and can speak a good game and can keep us around long enough, or we can keep him around long enough. Those are the men that we tend to go for. And because our fathers were absent, we tend to choose men who are absent. I mean, it's the craziest thing. We tend to choose mates that would create this pattern that we're used to. It's the craziest thing. We're afraid to let go of relationships. We grieve excessively when the breakup. So you would think that a trifling man, once he's gone, we're like, girl, woo, thank you. But our reaction is more negative. We become suicidal or depressed as a result of that breakup. But in all honesty, it's the whole father leaving again, right?
Wow.
I know women whose fathers weren't there, because dads help. Like when dads are in the home, they help you test boundaries. They let you do stuff that a mom won't do, right? But when that dad's not there, we have a sense of failure. We have a fear of failure because we didn't have a dad to help us push those boundaries, ride the bike or whatever it was. So we prefer immediate gratification. So the research says stuff like we can't save money, we are less disciplined in our eating and exercise and sex, we're promiscuous, we get pregnant early. I mean, the results are just like, oh, Lord, have mercy. So how can a woman recognize if her absent father is affecting her relationship patterns? Is look at the men you choose, pretty much. How much are they like your father in their absence? Are they emotionally absent, physically absent? Do they take care of you? Do they cover you? Those kinds of things. And if the answers are no, you can pretty much believe it's as a result of that void that dad left. That's my answer for that.
Wow. Okay. So when you actually do find someone who you feel like is your life partner, the one for you, you're going to get married, like, is there something you should tell them? Like, I mean, of course they'll know your family dynamic, but is there something else that needs to be said to let them know, like, okay, I grew up without a father. This is some of the things that I deal with. Like, is that a conversation that needs to be had?
Absolutely. But to be honest, men already know. They know a woman who grew. You know what I'm saying? They know. My single women used to come to me. My clients would come and they say, do I have a tattoo written on my head? And I'm like, yes. Not having a father. Yeah. Not having a father in the home. It impacts the way you walk into a room, right? You walk into a room and your head's down. A man can see that afar off. Do you know what I'm saying? It affects the decisions we make. Like when that woman pays for the meal or whatever, that date on the first date, you're already communicating, I don't need a man, because you've never had one, right? Dad was not in the home. So all of those things about us communicates to a man that, yeah, daddy wasn't there. Men know that. But as a result, as a response to your question, yes, a conversation does need to happen. One, so that you can correctly educate that man about what that means and who you are, so he doesn't make assumptions. Knowing that your father wasn't in the home, then he might make assumptions about what that means. But no, just because my dad wasn't there, let me tell you, who I am and how this impacted me and how this might show up in our relationship.
That's good. That's good. So on the next level of that, you marry that man, you love him, he accepts you for who you are. How can your parenting possibly be affected when you grew up with an absent father?
Oh man, I don't. So I'm gonna say maybe research and then maybe my own experiences. I don't know. I couldn't find even in the research about a mother of a daughter who, when that mother's father wasn't there. So I don't know what those dynamics are like. But, we hear in the Black community, man, moms love their sons and raise their daughters. And I wonder how much of that is impacted by the fathers not being in the home. So maybe being harder on the girls because we want them to do better than we did when it came to choosing mates. But also the mother of a son is harder on that boy because she wants him to grow up differently, knowing that he didn't have a man in the home. So she expects more from him, especially firstborns. But what we hear in the Black community, or what we hear, is that sometimes you expect that boy is like a surrogate husband. He's treated like her husband more so than a son. And so those are some of the parenting effects between a mother who's raising her own children when the father is absent. I know we're going to talk about the solutions, so all of this, honey, may or may not be true about me because I grew up with a father, and what are some of the solutions. But in talking about that, a mom in her parenting can counterbalance an absent father, or she can make it worse. And I know we've seen plenty examples of a mom making it worse when the daddy's not there. Stuff like, you just like your daddy, or you're going to be just like your daddy, or you just look just like him. I can't stand him. The way in which we speak to our children and the way in which we speak about those absent fathers is very critical when we're raising children.
That's good. That's something that I, being a first-time mother coming up soon, I often wonder, how, even though mom was my mom was a widower, I often wonder how that will affect my parenting, or if it will, or with the proper education, like some of the things you said, to make sure that you counteract, even though it won't be my situation because I'm married, but still.
Yes.
So that's why this is so interesting to me. So I don't have any other particular questions, but is there anything, like you said, some of those solutions, what do you want to leave the listeners with?
Yes, I was going to say one of the best ways to eradicate the effects of having an absent father is through education. That is learning as much about yourself as a result of the void or the gap that an absent father left in your life, learning as much as you can about that and how it manifests in your life and your relationships, and being intentional and working on that particular gap or thing is one of the best ways to eradicate it. And for women, having as many positive relationships with men as you possibly can, pastors, coaches, just whomever, your personal trainer. Try to surround yourself with as many men as you possibly can so you can learn that a healthy relationship isn't just a sexual one, but that a healthy relationship manifests itself in so many different ways. You want to have as many positive relationships with men as you possibly can. Okay, so education is the big one. And then I was going to say, Michelle, there's something about the church. I was saying that I had heard one of the biggest reasons churches are filled with more Black women than Black men is because of the absence of the father. And that pastor and becomes a father figure to women who did not have a father in their homes.
Wow. Yeah. That's good. I've never heard that perspective. That makes so much sense. Wow.
Yeah.
So I know. How can, unless you have anything else you want to add, how can listeners find you on social media? How can they support what you're doing? Is there anything that you want to let us know about?
Oh man, let's see. I know, and since I've lost my home base, right, just moving here to Jacksonville, Florida to take this job at Jacksonville University, I feel like I've lost my home base and haven't been established yet. But I would say that, let's see, people can find me and write to me here at Jacksonville University at lsummer@ju.edu, or I'm on me, LaTanya Summers on Facebook. I event every year called the Black Mental Health Symposium, where I train people on culturally specific tools to affect change in Black communities. So you can find the event page of the Black Mental Health Symposium. You can find me there. So I'm on LinkedIn. I am not on Twitter or Instagram personally. my business is there, but I am not on those mediums. But probably one of the quickest ways to find me is Facebook or through the email here at Jacksonville University. Or you can Google me.
All right. You will find me. Google her. You will find her. I love that.
Yes.
Okay, so I think we've got to, have some great conversations and some great perspectives today, and just a sneak peek of what you get when you get Dr. Summers. I think that you have given us great perspective. Even personally, it has just opened my eyes in a few areas, so I appreciate that. But if you don't have anything else you want to leave the listeners with, then I think we're all good.
Yes, all right, that will be fine with me. I have one exercise that I would give to my single women who would want to heal from these relationships and choose healthier partners, and something that I do, but it would be to have women write about a time that their father was absent, their important life events, and what that felt like, and what did you miss? His presence not being there, what did that mean? And then look at your current partner and see how many of those characteristics or features or emotions he evokes in you, or he or she evokes in you. And then you'd know if that was a relationship worth holding on to or not. But there are so many different things that we can do to heal ourselves to attract people who are healthier, rather than continuing to chase the ghost of a father who wasn't there.
Ooh.
And that is it.
Whoa, that little last line just got me. Continuing to chase the ghost of a father. Okay. Yes. Yeah. I love it. Okay. I'm excited about this. Thank you again so much for taking the time out. I really appreciate it.
Well, folks, that completes another episode from Booty Call the Bride. We'll see you next week.